A reading of the book, Narrative Dynamics, written by Melanie and Phillips, co-creator of the Dramatica theory of story. Postscript. As I go to press on this book, I have some additional material on narrative dynamics that's been bouncing around in my head. I figure I might as well spill it here, as for all I know, I may not ever get around to fully developing it into a new article, what with so many other interesting conundrums to pursue. So, here 'tis. I've written much on the concept of fractal narratives or fractal psychology, in which individuals, when they gather together toward a common purpose, will self-organize into a model of the mind. This happens because, as a group, we are stronger when we specialize than when we simply gather as a mob of general practitioners. So, one member of the group with a predilection toward thinking logically will gravitate to become the voice of reason for the group, which is why we have a reason archetype in stories. Another group member with a lean toward doubt will become the voice of skepticism, another archetype in narrative structure. In this manner, the group becomes an external projection of the process components of the mind, a story mind or narrative mind in which the players and processes of the organization mirror those of the organization of our own individual minds. This process continues up to another level of magnitude in which groups that come together toward a common purpose again self-organize, with one of the groups becoming the voice of reason for the overarching organization, and so on. There is no upward limit to the number of fractal story minds that may be nested along the vertical axis. But what of the horizontal axis? In our original development of Dramatica, we recognized that structural subplots are hinged off one of the characters in the overall story mind structure. This character then functions as the main character in his own narrative with its own cast of characters, such as reason and skeptic. Normally, in fictional stories, the characters of the subplot do not interact with any of the characters from the main narrative. But in real life, this happens all the time. Often, the main character in one story is just a player in another, and the voice of reason in one story may be the skeptic in a hinged narrative in which it is also involved. Some television series have taken advantage of this to create a rich real-world feel to the development of their plots. Looking back quite a few years to a program called Hill Street Blues, I can recall that many of the principal characters who were subordinate in the overarching story were main characters in their own sub-stories, and many of the other characters in the overarching story appeared as subordinate characters in each of their personal narratives dealing with completely different issues and structures than the overarching story. Confused? So was I. You really had to pay attention. It would be one thing if each character had his or her own sub-story, but to have the ensemble cast show up in other functions in several of these sub-stories, well, it requires expert storytelling to pull it off. A more recent example done very well was The West Wing. So, if we are to look at narrative dynamics in such a complex web of multi-level multilateral overlapping narrative structures, all we see is a mishmash of chaotic influences upon each and every character, just like real life. Fortunately, this multi-hubbed network is not truly chaotic, just endlessly variable. So, how does this affect my discussion of narrative dynamics? In other words, why is it in this book? Imagine the veins in a cantaloupe, watermelon, or human body. What determines the twisting, direction-changing path that each might take? Think of lightning. What determines the specific pathway it takes to the ground? Surely they all look alike as a genus of thing, but no two are identical. Well, here's the last thoughts I have to add to the mix at this juncture. Based on the speculations put forward so far, we can imagine that the veins in any system adopt their routes due to the collective gravitational influence on any given vein at every point along its route. In plain language, a vein in any dynamic system would be a straight line if not for the complex influence of the entire collection of other veins at different vertical fractal levels. Since dynamics progress continuously while structure progresses in steps, the combination of multiple hinged narratives in the same narrative space creates the apparent unpredictable pattern of each vein. It is in between these erratic veins that the cellular material forms in a melon or a brain or a mind, and the shape of it, the shape of subject matter hanging on a narrative, is dependent upon it. Okay. That's all.